at Microsoft's Media Room product, which is not a consumer product, it's an IPTV, Internet Protocol Television product that is used to run AT&T Uverse, is a fascinating product that can deliver a full television experience over the internet to a set-top box, so they have deals with all the regular set-top box folks, but also to an Xbox gaming console, to a PC, and it can deliver linear channels, VOD. They have cool multi-view, so they can do races or sporting events where you see the main thing and then you see alternative. They can do all kinds of interesting things, and they haven't done that much with it yet. They're selling it in Europe, and they sold it to AT&T Uverse, but there's no reason they couldn't plug in a actually global television play into their back office. I don't know that they're planning to do it, but it's pretty interesting technology.
But another place where some other interesting fallout could also come from this as well is that one of the changes to watch as well is that a lot of what you get right now online for the MSO services typically winds up being a lot of VOD access. You're going to see over the next year or so live streaming channel access through those same channels as well, and through interconnection to a television set. And the thing that it brings me to, not to get too geeky about this, but that then puts the MSO in the situation too, the cable operator in the situation where, in effect, they can wind up doing switch video in a very different way. They've got the opportunity now for you to get the channel that you're looking for, rather than giving you a whole bundle of channels all the time. Moving to this kind of delivery winds up also bringing to the point that there's a fair amount of bandwidth on that cable all of a sudden that could get freed up. It's the same way that they've been moving things around and getting things all digital from analog. There's other ways to be able to see additional bandwidth available on the cable infrastructure and the plant that they have running through your town, so they can provide a way to be able to either up the kind of internet connectivity that they're offering to you or whatever. So there's a real economic, not only is this big business gobbling up, but there's some real economic incentives too for a change to happen here.
Every time I do any talk like this, I always put MLB Advanced Media, MLB.com, on the list of people to watch. If you want to look at a company that is a content owner, that is ahead of the curve every season, but continually ahead of everybody else in how they think about multi-platform distribution of their product. If you just want to learn lessons about how to think about this, go to Major League Baseball and look at their website, and look at what they do on mobile devices, online, on pad devices, on over-the-top set-top plays. So I have a Roku box. Anybody know what a Roku box is? So it's a little box that plugs into the internet on one side and your TV on the other side, and you can get Netflix over it. But you can also get Major League Baseball's video service. So my wife is a crazy, crazy baseball fan. If they would charge one fee to get baseball everywhere, anytime, anywhere, she would pay it. And you can, on that service, watch every game that's going on in a given evening. You can decide whether you want to watch the home team feed or the away team feed. And you can scroll back in time and watch every other game that's been played throughout the season, either in full-length form or in short-length form. That was last year. I have no idea what they're going to do this year. Although
at a cost.
At a cost. Always at a cost. In their case, it's for crazy enthusiasts. But, they show what's possible, and they're always ahead of the curve. Amazon's cloud business, for us geeks who are worrying about sort of where this is all going, Amazon's cloud, we all buy stuff from Amazon. In doing that, they had to build a very, very sophisticated computing infrastructure, and they basically defined the whole cloud computing business, which we could do a whole separate session on and I won't go into. But they are smart and ahead of the curve, and they are delivering video out of the cloud, and they are doing video transcoding in the cloud, and they are enabling a whole set of businesses that will affect the TV and video business soon enough.
I'd toss in one other thing that Amazon's doing that I think is really driving a lot too, is that they're being very transparent about what they're doing. You can go to the Amazon site and you can find out a lot about their rate structure. You can find out a lot about how they're doing their business, and it's really has some follow through, I think, with the rest of the industry, because they've also been the prices on these services have been coming down quite a bit, but the Amazon approach to this is to make a lot of that really very open and very known.
You literally go to their website, you put in your credit card number, and now you have a server somewhere in wherever. And if you want more servers, you just like click on I want more and click buy, and you have more servers. It's quite remarkable. We can skip some of these, I think.
Yeah.
But
Some of them are the obvious. I mean, the one thing that the elephant in the room in a lot of ways, and this is Netflix, and we'll talk a little bit more about Netflix too. But Netflix, I think it's no brilliant and new observation that Netflix really got a lot of things really, really right, and they are doing a lot of things very, very right.
And again, if you want to go back to institutions transforming themselves, here is a company that was built around sending you physical media in the mail. If you think that's what their business is, you're wrong. They've completely and utterly changed their business, their financial model, their growth prospects, and everything by turning their business into an online streaming connected to every device business. And by the way, they scare the crap out of some of the people like Comcast. Because, again, cable companies, I'm not picking on Comcast except that they're the biggest, cable companies have a limited footprint. Netflix happens to have a national footprint, and we'll come back to that in a minute. And by the way, just check out Lady Gaga's new glasses that she introduced with Polaroid at CES. They're sort of cool. They don't really, not really relevant to us, but they're digital cameras and all kinds of stuff embedded in glasses. They actually will be relevant to us eventually. Yep. Yep. We'll come back to stuff to read later. So, a couple of practical realities. If I were giving you advice, and I guess this is free advice, so take it for what it's worth, where would I put my efforts were I at a station? First thing I'd do is I'd get my house in order, and it sounds like a lot of you are pretty far down this path already. I would implement Cove, and I would make sure I was putting local content into Cove. Why? Because our goal with Cove is to provide a platform that will be expanding and evolving and useful to you as a means of getting your video out there. So the iPhone application was announced over the weekend at Press Tour. It doesn't yet have local content in it, but it will over time. And so the idea is, you get all of this connected together, and now we collectively are distributing an enormous amount of content across the country from both local and national levels across multiple devices, and it's as easy as we know how to make it for stations. And by the way, the session after this in the main room is the interactive folks talking about the roadmap for what they're doing on various projects. So I implement Cove. It's as close as I can get to describing it as public broadcasting doing what Major League Baseball did, which was to create one federated system so everybody can do their work. Get your media assets and workflow in order. Make sure, and you're going to talk about this a little bit later, make sure that you've got one great master asset for everything, and then your workflow is designed around sending it to multiple places. What those multiple places are, I can't tell you today. Well, I can tell you what they should be today, but I can't tell you what they should be a week from now. But if you have the right workflow and the right approach to doing this stuff, it will make it all much easier down the road. Start digitizing your library of content. Start with the most important and relevant stuff and keep getting more stuff in there. And if there are American Archive funds available, then go for it and keep that going, and get involved in social media. Now, based on the number of hands that went up before about online streaming, I'm betting most of you have done most of this. Then, and here's my biggest piece of advice, get your whole organization, whether it is the development folks, the on-air folks, the community engagement folks, the technology folks, working together to start building one-to-one relationships with your audience. Because the critical thing down the line is going to be how you connect with your audience. And we're in years past, you put the signal in the air, and 40 years ago there were only 4 stations or 5 stations in town, and so you had a pretty good chance of reaching people. And then you got to 20 channels and 80 channels and 100 channels and 500 channels, and now we're at infinity channels. And doing that, broadcasting without expecting to connect one-on-one with folks, doesn't make sense. Not that you shouldn't use that technology, not that we don't want live over-the-air television and live television on cable, but assuming that that is enough to build a sustainable relationship is wrong. So you need to start to find a way to get people to engage, and maybe it's through Facebook and online, and maybe it's through mailing lists, and maybe it's through getting them to come to an event. Different people will be very different, and you're certainly not going to get 100% of your audience to engage. But as you look down at this world with infinite competition, with people having infinite options about where, when, and how to get whatever they want, You need to build build a relationship with them and have an affinity. So that's my take on this.
Okay.
Here's Jerry's take.
I had a small poster that I had in my office for a long time that I really loved. It said, "The future doesn't sneak up on you; it just runs you over." You know, the thing is that the change doesn't sneak up on you either. I mean, change is happening the same kind of way. I'll start at maybe a little bit of a high level here, but try to get down to some practical things too. As we mentioned earlier, as Eric was talking about, the pace of change is exponential. You know, and it's not going to stop. So. One of the things you have to do is embrace that as much as you can and find ways that you can just realize that that is going to be the case. One thing that I like to point out too is how adoption cycles are getting shorter and more dramatic. I mean, one thing to think about is that a year ago right now the iPad didn't exist, and you know, then it did. And for any of you that used an iPhone or an iPad, if you think back to the moment of when you first got it in your hand. Your adoption cycle went from the idea of you take it out of the box with a little excitement, and you look at this thing and you try to figure out, okay, so what is this? And you go in and you take a look at it and you punch a couple of buttons, and with the iPhone experience anyway, at least my own personal experience, you go very, very quickly from the idea of learning the device, understanding the device, using the device, and thinking to yourself, how did I ever live without this? And that kind of adoption cycle for a lot of this kind of technology is going to happen like that, and it's going to continue to happen too. What seemed outrageous and outlandish, you know, a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago, is going to wind up becoming sort of yesterday's news very quickly.
And just to riff quickly on that, the iPad didn't exist a year ago. They've sold something like 12 or 13 million of them. There were 80 tablet products introduced at CES this year, competitors to the iPad.
Right.
By the way, I didn't see one that I thought was worthy. So we'll see if anybody really gets it.
And the idea about business models evolving and business plans dissolving. You know, a very, again, sort of a common thing that people have said is that it used to be that you would have a business plan that was 5 years long. Nobody has a business plan that's 5 years long at this point. You have to be looking at the idea that your business plan is going to become irrelevant very quickly because of the way things are changing. And that has a lot of implications, of course, in terms of budgets, in terms of plan and design and staffing and all that. But you have to just, you know, I think we all need to, and we all are realizing that that is going to continue. And it goes back to some of what Eric was talking about too, about that whole idea about trying to figure out, the real goal is to try to figure out what's going to stick. You know, what is it out of what's changing in here that you can really use to add on to the value proposition of what it is that you're creating. And my point here about it has to resonate means that you have to find a way to communicate the value of what you're doing in a way that actually means something to people. There's a link here that I hope you can read, but I'll mention that it's HubSpot.com. Is a couple of guys from, again, I think from the Media Lab, thereabouts anyway, in the Boston area, who have written a book called Inbound Marketing, and if you haven't read it, I'd really recommend it. Or take a look at this website. There's a lot of very good. This particular link actually has a lot of, I think, really good introductory ideas of how their basic idea is that inbound marketing is very different than most other marketing that we do traditionally, or even the way that most people in broadcast have run their businesses. They have the analogy of most marketing has been picking up a megaphone and yelling to a crowd. You know. The problem is, as we were talking about, is that there are lots and lots of people with megaphones. In a world of scarcity, there were few megaphones. In a world of non-scarcity, there are a lot of megaphones. Everybody's trying to get everybody else's attention. The trick is what ways can you do, what can you do to be able to draw people into you? So to get the idea of having people coming back into finding out who you are and what you're doing and really relating to it. So one of the things that I think is important there. There we go.